Well, the Edmonton Oilers offseason is shaping up quite nicely thus far. They were able to sign a couple of top six forwards in Jeff Skinner and Victor Arvidsson, and then Jeff Jackson, the acting GM, able to bring back most of the team's free agents, including Adam Henrique, Matthias Janmark, Corey Perry. They bought out Jack Campbell, Warren Foegele, Vinny Desharnais among the notables that left town. It's time to bring in our good friend Jason Strudwick, who is becoming a fan favorite on the show, just as he was a fan favorite when he played in the National Hockey League for the Edmonton Oilers and many other teams. Struddy, great to see you, buddy. Wow, this is a very different day of free agency than Edmonton Oilers fans are used to. You know, you're used to the team losing guys and maybe not being able to sign two top six forwards, and yet Jeff Jackson had a heck of a day on Monday. On paper, do you see this as a more talented group than the one that went all the way to Game 7 of the Cup Final?
In my mind, there's no doubt about it. You know, the team on paper today is better than we saw. It was 2 shots away from winning the Stanley Cup. What a change, you know, and one of the concerns going into this free agency, you know, if you're a free agent, you're like, well, who am I negotiating with? Who's the GM? Well, Jeff Jackson stood up and along with his other assistant GMs, in the group, they did a really good job assembling a lot more talent, and they got it on budget-friendly deals. Jeff Skinner, yeah, he's made a lot of money over his career. I think he's, $100 million is a lot of cash, Jay. That's kind of Jay Onrait cash.
Yep.
And he now is looking for an opportunity to win. He wants to win a Stanley Cup. He sees this as a destination. And why wouldn't you want to play off Leon Draisaitl? On the other side, you got Victor Arvidsson. Arvidsson is going to be the Hyman version of a player that McDavid has, and now Draisaitl has one. So, I mean, Draisaitl's got to be the happiest guy heading into these, this offseason. Obviously not thrilled they didn't win the Stanley Cup, but the team got better. And I think that's really important to note.
Okay, Struddy, we got to talk more about Jeff Jackson. This guy was a wizard on Monday, and, you know, he's president of hockey operations. I think a good portion of the fan base would prefer that he just remained as the team's GM. I know he said publicly he doesn't want to do it, but shouldn't he do it? I mean, it seems like he's really good at this.
Well, he seems to have a really calm and measured approach, and I give the guy a lot of credit. Not a lot of experience in that role right now, but I mean, he took it over, and I think, you know, he did benefit from the fact the team is really good and people want to come here. And he was opportunistic. You know, the Arvidsson, the situation with Jeff Skinner, he was opportunistic, but he also got the deals done. He understood what the team needed and addressed those needs in a major way. You know, a lot of fans thought that some of those needs would be addressed perhaps towards the trade deadline. Well, they're addressed in the summer. Yeah, sure, there's some salary cap issues I have to figure out. Does someone go in LTI or maybe someone gets squeezed out? But he did a good job in a situation where you're right. He doesn't even want the job. Who does a job that well? It doesn't even want it. I've never done a job well, and I wanted these jobs. So here's a guy who didn't want the job and did a really good job with it. So it's really impressive. And I guess now for him, he's got to take a deep breath, look around and figure out who is potentially going to take that GM job. Does he want it? Does he find someone internally? Is there someone outside that wants to do it? These are big moments for the Edmonton Oilers and big decisions. And it seems like Jeff Jackson's not afraid to add, smarter or, not maybe unfair to him, but people who are as smart or smarter than him into the fold to help him do what they want to do, which is ultimately win a Stanley Cup with Connor McDavid and company.
Well, you know, Struddy, there's a great history of former agents becoming GMs. Lacroix, Ken Hughes in Montreal. There's no reason why it couldn't happen. So we'll definitely monitor that situation. There are some lingering questions for this Edmonton Oilers team. They want to get Dylan Holloway and Philip Broberg under contract, and the future of Evander Kane is a huge one. We know he was dealing with significant injuries throughout the postseason. You know, there's no talk of him waiving that no-trade clause yet. You know, a lot of people think maybe he could be headed to LTIR. What would you, Jason Strudwick, like to see happen with Evander Kane?
Well, I love Evander Kane, the player, when he's healthy. And we haven't seen him healthy for quite some time. You know, he said he was dealing with this injury, a hip, maybe a sports hernia or something, since before Christmas. So that's a long time. They've got to get it sorted out. Jeff Jackson talked about the idea of them taking some time, figuring this out. What does this look like? How does it feel? They're getting second opinions, all that stuff to figure out what the plan is. So he could very well start on LTIR, but they've got to make sure they get Holloway and Broberg figured out. That was like 2 acquisitions at the deadline. Holloway last year and Broberg spent most of the year in the minors. They came up in the playoffs and they played pretty big roles, specifically Broberg. There was nights for Broberg. He wasn't your 5th, 6th defenseman. This guy is young, he can skate, he's big, and he's Swedish. And I don't know anyone who doesn't love Swedish defensemen on their team.
That's absolutely true. As good as the team looks, Jason, is there a need in your mind that this team still has to address as far as the roster is concerned?
Well, the depth up front seems to be covered. And we're going to assume, let's just play for a game right now that everyone fits on this roster, which we know they don't salary cap wise, but let's just assume they do. I think up front, they've got a lot of depth there. The return of Adam Henrique, I'm a big fan of this player. I remember watching him play for New Jersey in the Stanley Cup Final a decade ago when I had a full head of hair. And I love the way this guy plays. Like he's smart, and you can't teach smart. Smart is just what he is, and he affects so many parts of the game, makes his wingers better. So that is a need that they talked about, but he's now back. Henrique's there. What I'd like to see is another puck-moving defenseman on the back end. We've got Bouchard, who's probably the most naturally gifted puck mover the Oilers have, and obviously his point totals reflected that. The other guys, they can move it competently, but they don't move it like that. I think another puck-moving defenseman would be really nice. You look at the Florida Panthers. They had Forsling, they had Montour. Both are really good at moving the puck. I think that extra little pass getting under your zone means you spend less time in your zone. So that's something I'd like to see them do, and they do it this summer. I think it's going to be impossible, Jay. But we've seen, previously they traded for Matthias Ekholm. Maybe that's something they can do towards the deadline, find a guy that fits that mold to add. And it's not that what they have now isn't working. It's just if you really want to make sure you have everything's, lined up perfectly, Jay, that's probably what I'm looking for.
Okay, and then the Leon Draisaitl contract situation is sort of the cloud that hangs over this team right now. Would you, Jason, like to see something happen this summer, or would you be okay if the team is doing great this season and they just walk Leon right into free agency and deal with it at that time?
Oilers fans are going to hate me, but you can't move Leon Draisaitl away. This guy is such an important part of your team. Arguably one of the best 2, 3, 4, 5 players in the league. Doesn't matter when you're talking that height. But what I think would make sense for Leon and everyone is extending Leon for one additional year. I know this is probably not going to work, but the reason I do that, it's hard for Leon to sign with the unknown of what Connor McDavid does next summer. And good players want to play with good players. Let's make no mistake about it. If Leon stays, he wants to stay knowing that Connor's going to be here. So is it fair to ask his friend to make that decision well in advance of when he has to make it? And I'm not saying he wants to go or wants to stay or whatever, but I think that for both of them to walk out at the same time, then they can decide what they want to do and how they want to do it. Again, it probably won't happen. But that makes a lot more sense. So ask me now, if he doesn't sign, do you move him away? No, because your team is poised, built, and ready to compete for another Stanley Cup. And, there's nothing more important than that to the team and to this fan base.
Okay, Jason Strudwick, the way this last week has played out, are the Edmonton Oilers not only the clear favorites in the Pacific Division, but the clear favorites in the Western Conference?
I think they are. Jay, they've done so many good things, and they learned a lot in the playoffs. And I when you play, you don't always understand how hard it is. I never got to the Stanley Cup Final, but as I've watched this team grow and develop, I've seen them understand how hard it is to win. They've learned every lesson. They've had heartbreak, losing to the Stanley Cup champions 3 seasons in a row. 3 seasons. They've seen it. They've tasted it. They were 2 shots away from winning the Stanley Cup this past year. And give Florida full marks. They won it. Florida's not as good as they were last year. They've lost a couple players. Vancouver gave them a good run, and having Dick go healthy will help. Jake DeBrusk, I love that addition, but I'm not sure they're at the same point with some of the changes they've had on that group. Calgary, Seattle, the Kings. I don't think Vegas is going to be the same. So I think in Pacific Division, you can pretty comfortably say the Oilers will be first. Then you look at the Central, probably Dallas again. They're a good team, but again, the Oilers took that step. They learned how to win. So, if you're picking who you're going to think makes the final, I'd go with the Oilers right now because of the moves they've done, Jay. But as importantly, or maybe more importantly, the lessons they've learned. And unfortunately, a lot of times, winning takes a lot of heartbreak. It is heartbreak after heartbreak when you're trying to get that Wayne Gretzky rookie card and you're open pack after pack after pack, but finally you get it. And then you realize it was worth it. All that struggle was worth it. And I feel like the Oilers are heading in that direction.
Man, this is a great chat. And, I hope I get to talk to you before this season begins. But I hope you have a great summer, Struddy, and maybe just a little time off from Ryan Rishaug. Just a little space for the two of you.
Yeah. everyone needs break from him. Everyone needs time off, right? He's a little bit bossy. I didn't realize he was so bossy, but the good thing is every time I get a text from him, he wants me to do something, I pretend, oh, sorry, my phone died, and I answer him the next day. That's my go-to. Actually, I should have said that. Now he'll know my trick.
Yeah, okay, we won't show anyone. Don't worry, he won't see this. He won't see this. He never watches the show. Struddy, you're the best. Thanks for this.